Good evening, and welcome to the Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union meeting. It is Wednesday, October 27th. If you'd all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The first action is the approval of the agenda, and we do have one addition under personnel. If we could add D for a leave request. Are there any other additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
I have one more thing under finance.
Okay.
Vehicle replacement.
Vehicle replacement.
G.
Okay. Anything else that needs to be added to the agenda? So with those two additions, leave request and vehicle replacement, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll second.
Motion by Eric, second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We do have a quorum, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. All right, I was only seeing it. All right, general public comment. Is there anyone joining us that would like to speak to an issue not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the minutes of September 22nd. A motion would be in order to approve the minutes as presented.
I actually found a mistake.
Okay.
On the executive session, I don't recognize Kristen Ross or Tom Callahan making any motions. I don't believe they were present during executive session.
Okay. That looks like it's a holdover from Quarry Valley, I'm guessing, because Tom doesn't come to this meeting.
Tom was online, wasn't he, I believe?
For
That was for
SU?
Not
Oh,
for-
no, not for sure, that's right.
Yeah, because they weren't even listed as attended.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So, I'm not sure what that's going, or who that's going to be. Executive motion to move to, yeah. Let's see, and Seth, you were here last meeting, right, Seth?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so Kristen would have only come if Seth wasn't here. No. All right, so we will have to go back and, I guess, check the meeting to see who those are. Okay. I didn't bring my...
Don't hold me to it, though.
Okay, we'll wait 2 seconds, see if Mike has his notes. There's a good chance Quarry Valley may have SUs on it then, because I think it's just a flip-flop.
No, I just have the motion, I didn't write down
Okay.
who it was. Sorry.
Okay. All right, so we will, you have that, Chris?
No,
Oh.
let's mix and match though.
Okay. All right, so a motion would be in order to approve with the correction to take place on the executive session on the last page, the motion and second.
I'll make the motion to approve it with those corrections.
Okay, motion by Tina, second.
Second.
Second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of warrants. You receive your warrants via your GRCSU email. Questions should be directed to Lewis. A motion would be in order to approve the warrants as presented.
I make a motion to approve the warrants.
Motion by Lynette, second.
I'll second.
Second by Tina. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Superintendent's report.
Lisa, do you want to just ask for questions tonight?
Yeah, that would be great. I kind of asked Lisa and Chris to do if we can just do kind of a condensed, if anybody has questions based on their written report, so we can spend the bulk of our time working on the budget. So everyone, did you have anything specific, anyone that they wanted to discuss about Lisa or Chris's report, or? You can always email them if you have a question that comes up later. Moving on to personnel, we have contract recommendations in front of you. For support staff, there are 3. Bridget Shatraw for para at Pulteney Elementary, Leah Murphy, para at Proctor Elementary, and Tina Crandell moving as a building sub to Pulteney Elementary para. And then for extracurricular, and these are being funded via a grant, these are all for leadership team at Proctor High School, Phyllis Carrera, Stacy Garcia, Ben Curtis, Sarah Marcus, Alex Kennedy, and Linda McCune. Are there any questions on any of the recommendations? Hearing none, a motion would be in order to approve the recommendations as presented. Motion by Seth, second.
Second.
Second by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Resignations. You have 4 resignations before you. Jessica Vincent, who was a West Rutland building sub. Courtney Courier of Proctor High School, para. Christine Cam, the Director of Student Services. Peggy Thomas, Assistant Business Manager. Any questions with the resignations presented? Hearing none, a motion would be in order to accept the resignations.
I'll move to accept the resignations as presented.
Motion by Eric, second.
I'll second.
Second by Tina. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Open positions are provided in your packet for information only. We do have 1 leave request that is also, the letter should be in your packet from Lindsay Ryder. Do you want to speak to that, Chris?
I would approve this request.
Okay. Are there any questions about the leave request from Lindsay? Hearing none, a motion would be in order to approve Lindsay's leave request.
Make a motion to approve her request.
Motion by Tina, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Lynette. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Finance, Lewis.
Good evening, everyone. So I have a few things on the agenda. I'm going to shift things around slightly just to get some of the smaller things out of the way before we start to look at budget. So the first item is the credit card resolution that's on the agenda. There was a one-page document, I believe it was in the packet. And so what this is about is I'm looking to increase our credit card limit at the SU. We currently have a credit card limit of $9,000, and each senior admin has a credit card. I have the ability to increase and decrease limits on a daily basis for each member, but at this time we can't exceed the total of $9,000 available credit as an SU. There's a few times where we've run into where we need to make a purchase that's kind of large and they don't accept POs, and so using the credit card is the most efficient way to purchase that. But by doing that, it really ties our hands of either eating up all our credit or we don't have enough credit available. So I'm asking the board to approve the resolution to increase our credit card limit to $30,000 for the SU. The credit card purchases follow the same procedure as other purchases. A PO should be done in advance. The PO gets approved by the administrator that is supervising wherever the purchase is coming from. So if it's special ed, then it would be special ed. If it's finance, it would be me, or technology would be a Greg. So it's whatever department the purchase is coming from signs the PO, and then once the PO is approved, then the purchase can be made with a credit card, and it's paid immediately as soon as the receipt is submitted to the bookkeepers.
Questions for Louis?
Louis, if I could, how long does that account go without checking by your bookkeepers? If someone charges something, so say a month?
No. So they're checking the account every 2 weeks before they process accounts payable. They're checking it to make sure that they have all receipts that have for purchases that happened in the last 2 weeks, so that they can get them processed in that accounts payable run, so that we could avoid late fees and interest costs.
Okay, this is, as far as, and I have no problem with this, I'm just saying that this is probably if someone was going to take money from us, this would be the easiest avenue. So I just wanted to make sure, 2 weeks is not a big time, but that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess just to follow up on that, I'm presuming from the names on here, let's say Joe Smith needs to use the credit card to purchase something. Are you actually giving them the credit card number, or someone within your department is actually paying that? So does everyone know the credit card number, or does only the people on this list have the credit card number?
So the credit cards are actually in the people's name who have them. So each administrator would have a card in their name. And I mean, they really shouldn't be giving it out. And that's what we tell all administrators, even outside the SU. There's an occasion where, let's say, Chris needs to purchase something and he asks Christine to do it. He'll give the card temporarily to Christine to make the purchase and then give it right back to him. Whether it be an online purchase or she's running to the store. So that's really the only instance where it's being given, but it should be given immediately back to the administrator.
Okay.
So the people that's on the resolution, so let me just go to that document. Patricia Kulik, she's our current treasurer. She needs to approve any resolutions. And then I'm the maintenance director for all the credit cards and the superintendent. Is that the list that you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. So that's not a list of everybody that has credit cards.
So that's the question. So everyone that's considered admin has a credit card?
Correct, both in the SU and then for each district. So let me, not all admin have a credit card. So
How many credit cards are there?
all principals have a credit card, and then there's some assistant principals or associate principals that have credit cards. But there are some of the guidance counselors are considered admin, they don't have credit cards.
Okay.
And then there's the assistant business manager that doesn't have a credit card.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, motion would be in order to approve the resolution to increase the credit card limit to $30,000 for the SU.
I'll make the motion to extend the credit line for the credit card up to 30,000 as the resolution asks for.
Motion by Lynette, second.
I'll second.
Second by Lance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next item on my list is the vehicle replacement. So West Rutland had a 2010 Honda minivan, which was in an accident a couple weeks ago. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the vehicle was totaled. It was a special ed van. We're receiving approximately, I believe it's about $9,500, we haven't received it yet, from the insurance company, which was the value of the van based on the current market value. West Rutland is in need to replace that van as soon as possible. I have shopped around for new vehicles. Anybody that's tried to buy a vehicle lately knows that the market is very difficult right now. It's pretty impossible to get a new vehicle without ordering it. And used vehicles, both used and new, are at a premium, and it's hard to find used ones as well. I did find a 2015 Ford Explorer with 52,000 miles at the Ford dealership, which is where we bought our other two trucks with the grant money last year. It is two-wheel drive, but they're willing to put in new snow tires on it at no cost. A purchase price is $19,500. I have checked comps on both two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles, and it is a couple $1,000s below any two-wheel drive vehicles that I have found, none of which are in local, and probably about $6,000 to $8,000 below any four-wheel drive vehicles. I have been in communication with the superintendent and the principal, and they feel the two-wheel drive would be sufficient as long as it had good snow tires on it. So if the board approves it, we would use the insurance money to pay for a piece of it, and the additional cost would come out of Corey Valley or West Rutland's general fund budget to cover the rest. The vehicle would be stationed at West Rutland and would have a mixed usage of both special ed and regular ed.
Seth, you have a question? You're muted.
Quick question. I believe the Explorer, that the two-wheel drive, that's a front-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, correct?
Correct.
I would not be very comfortable supporting a rear-wheel drive. But a front wheel, I would be comfortable with, including snow tires.
I'm pretty sure it is a front-wheel drive. It is from Florida. They just took it in a trade.
If it's two-wheel drive, it'll be front-wheel drive.
How does it become special ed, general ed, when everyone else that has, because we're buying it from our general ed funds?
So the piece that we're getting from the insurance company would be the special ed piece. The van is currently being used for both special ed and regular ed, so to keep it, to be able to use it for both, Jay is looking to use general fund money to pay for the remainder, which would be about 50%.
And how many seats does this have?
It does have a third row seat, so I believe it seats 7.
You know, we're talking with Jay. Jay said that they typically transport no more than 5 individuals, so that would be fun. That's including the driver.
I just wanted to, I mean, if it's for West Rutland, and
Why is the question coming up here?
yeah, I mean, and it's Corey Valley's general fund.
Good question.
It would be a GRCSU vehicle. Because special ed is paying for a piece of it.
So,
It can be used anywhere.
so Quarry Valley's paying for the majority of it, so it becomes a GRCSU vehicle that could go to Middletown Wells.
That is correct.
It seems like it's a question that should also be discussed at Quarry Valley.
So that we bought 2 trucks with GRCSU money, both of which are stationed at Quarry Valley schools. I mean, definitely, since Quarry Valley is paying for half of it, and that would be taken into consideration if it was ever needed to transfer. But special ed, while it's stationed at West Rutland, we need to make sure that special ed is getting a priority, that special ed needs aren't falling behind, that they come first as opposed to regular ed.
Why is the insurance money only coming out of the special ed? Why isn't it being split between Quarry Valley and special ed?
Because the old van was special ed, 100% special ed.
Oh, so now we're trying to flip it up.
Well, Lewis, you said the old van was being used for both special ed and general ed, correct? At West Rutland?
Yeah, at the time, it's been only used for special ed. It was
Oh,
actually, technically, it was the vehicle that we've used, it's been used at multiple schools, but for special ed transportation, because it was originally purchased with special ed dollars.
so why the change now? And why, if there's a change, why not a Quarry Valley conversation about the change? I feel like this is a little sleight of hand, because there's only 3 Quarry Valley board members here, and you're asking Quarry Valley to pay for half of it, when it was something that was...
As far as why we're not asking Quarry Valley, it's because this meeting comes first.
Right, but if they say yes tonight, you're gonna go buy it.
That is the plan because the need is immediate.
Why can't you use ESSER funds to fill in, if it's special ed, to be used for special ed? And why does it need to be used for regular ed also?
Does it shuttle people to Stafford for any reason or stuff like that, Lois?
Jay would be
I
best.
believe they use it to transport, or are looking to use it to be able to transport students for sports, or for whatever other non-special ed things that come up, whether it's...
So this is a big conversation that needs to take place within Quarry Valley. This is the wrong meeting for this conversation. Lynette?
Yeah, the reason I'm a little boggled is we bought, I believe, wasn't it 3 different vans for special ed originally, Lewis? I know Rutland Town has one, West Rutland, and I'm not sure where the other one is.
Proctor has one.
Proctor van, when that was the one that was used over at Proctor. Those were bought back when Rick Reardon was here with the ARA funds, so probably about 12 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they were, at the time, they were,
We've replaced ours since then.
we were told that they were going to be for special ed only.
Yes, they were.
The only thing that makes me nervous, I agree with Lisa, I'm not so sure this should be coming in front of our board right away. But now you've got me wondering if all of the vans, as in ours, are being used for both regular ed and special ed. Like I said, the original thing was it was going to be for special ed only. I guess I would be a little nervous if I was Quarry Valley to find out it's running just sports programs, whatever, but I'm a little...
Yeah, my understanding was that van was being used for special ed, because West Rutland does have their own van they had purchased a while back that they were using for other non-special ed things. That was actually bought through West Rutland.
They have another vehicle as well, that's
Yeah.
regular ed.
Right.
So why would they need this one to be regular and special?
The other one is old as well, and they have not been able to get parts for it, and the inspection is ending. So they're not sure how much longer they're going to be able to use that van.
I'd like to make a motion.
Mike?
I'd like to make a motion to table till after Corey Valley has had a chance to go over this.
Mike makes a motion to table this discussion. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Lynette. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Amanda Whedon. You have a question, Amanda?
No, sorry, I was raising my hand for aye.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, motion passes unanimously.
So I will, I understand that the motion was made, and that is unfortunate. So, I mean, this vehicle will not be available at the time the Corey Valley meets. I can't ask the dealer to hold this for 3 weeks. And I do understand, I will need to let Jay know that the needs that he has immediately won't be met. But we will bring it to the Corey Valley Board and see what the discussion is.
All right. Lynette?
Borrow one.
I can't hear you, Lynette.
I'm sorry. Louis, is there any way, I'm not sure how much the special ed vans are used, if any of the other districts can lend their van for a couple weeks? I don't know how readily they are being used at each district.
Well, West Rutland already has another vehicle, like I said, that they don't know how much longer they're going to be able to use it once the inspection is up. Pulteney has a truck which is being used for a special ed need, and Proctor has a truck which I understand is being used on a daily basis.
And ours?
Yeah, I don't know, Lynette, what their use is right now. Actually, I see Sarah's on, she might know.
Hi, everyone. Do you want to know when we use it, Lynette?
Well, I just want to know, I mean, are we using it to the extent that it can't be loaned out to another district while they come up with one if they're in such a need?
Yeah, ours is used for students for unified sports. We've also used it for some grocery shopping for some of our functional skills classes. But I'm happy to reach out to Jay to see if we can work something out if he needs it.
And I would suggest that they reach out to Jen as well. I mean, they need the vehicle every single day? I mean, they're transporting people. This seems like if they're in such a dire need for this, that Jay should reach out to the building administrators that have vehicles that are special ed available and see if they can't coordinate around the days. Proctor has a van also. Is that van used every single day? Not that I'm aware of.
Lisa, that was the van that was in the accident.
The van that, so
That van was being shifted to you to fulfill transportation needs, so that was the one.
So Proctor doesn't have a van either then?
So there's a lot of information that I feel like I'm not really up to speed on here with this conversation. It's kind of like dragging it out here. So the van that was in the wreck actually was the van that had been in Proctor but was in West Rutland, and that was in the wreck. So Proctor doesn't have a van and West Rutland doesn't have a van, is what we're saying.
That is correct.
Right, West Rutland just had their own van, that was not a special ed van. Prior to using the
Okay.
one that
All right, so I'm even in more agreement with Mike. This so needs to be a Corey Valley discussion, so. All right, moving on.
Okay, moving on to budget-related items. So the first thing I'll just mention in the packet was it's a 2-page document called GRCSU budgeting tool. This was just a sort of a cheat sheet that I put together based on a Corey Valley discussion and request. This is going to circulate around all of the board, the district board as well as the SU. And it just, it's kind of a sheet for you to just a reference when we're looking at budgets with our current account string and a description of each piece of the account string and some of the common expenses that you would find that would fall within those pieces of that account string. Any questions on that before I move on to budget? Okay. So looking at the GRCSU budget. So in the packet was a 10-page document. We're going to flip back and forth between some of those pages. That's it. So starting on page 1 is the summary of changes. So the SU budget has four pieces to it. The first two main pieces are the general fund budget and the special ed budget. The two smaller pieces, which you don't necessarily see here, but you'll see at the local board meetings, is the regular ed billbacks and the special ed billbacks. Regular ed billbacks are positions that are contracted at the SU level and then billed back to the local districts. And the reason for them being at the SU level varies based on each specific circumstance, but it could be, some of the common ones are the position is partially grant funded or the position is partially special ed funded. So if you have a position, let's say that's 50% grant funded, say through CFP funds and title funds, then they would receive an SU contract for a full-time position. The SU would pay for half of it, and then the other half will be billed back to the school or the district where that person is located. And then the special ed billbacks is for the disallow or the eligible piece. This is a topic that we talk about pretty frequently. So for every staff member that's in special ed, for most of them, I'd say probably 90-95% of them, have a portion of their total compensation which is billed to regular ed because they're doing functions that are not special ed related, whether that be duties or they're working with regular ed students, and those situations could vary by building and by staff member. So looking at the summary of changes, I have this also broken down based on general ed and special ed. So looking at the general fund first. So the general fund would be our central office positions. It's the curriculum position, administration, the central business office, technology, and then our rent. And if you go to page 4, the general is where the general fund budget starts. You can find our revenues at the top, and then each department has their own section in the budget. The general fund budget is assessed based on ADM, which is the average daily membership. This is a count of students in our buildings that is taken at the beginning of each school year. It's a 20-day window during the first 30 days of the school year. We use prior year ADM for our assessment purposes because ADM is currently being taken now and we wouldn't have that data available to us if we were using current year ADM. So we've always used prior year. On page 2 is where you can find those allocation percentages. I've listed the last 3, current year and 2 years prior. So looking at the general fund, which is on the left-hand side, we're using an ADM of 1858 for this year, and you can see the ADM for each of your districts and the percentage of the assessment that your district would pay. If you're looking at prior years, you'll notice that the current 2021 ADM is very close to the FY20 ADM, and that's because there was legislation passed last year because of COVID that held ADM harmless, which means that if districts had a decrease in ADM because of the pandemic, that they used the prior year ADM. And there was certain aspects of ADM that were not held harmless. So as you can see, the only change in ADM was a 0.29 pupil in Corey Valley. So it's pretty close. We're looking at 1858.24 compared to 1858.53. So going over some of the major changes in the general fund budget, the budget is currently down 3%, which is equal to $51,000. The budget includes a 10% increase in health insurance premiums, which is the estimate that we were given by Visbit, which equals approximately $19,000. There's $15,000 in increases in insurance, including workman's comp, unemployment, and liability, and that's due to an increase in rates. Audit increase of $2,000, and then an increase in professional services under the curriculum section of $30,000, and that's a shift from Medicaid to the general fund. We talked a little bit about this, I believe it was in August, when we talked about the year-end surplus and the year-end financials. So our Medicaid revenue has been decreasing over the last few years. One of the major reasons has been COVID, and less students receiving less services, whether it's because they're remote, less students are in buildings, students are being homeschooled. So that decrease in Medicaid revenue has made that account fall short, and so the only way to keep that account in the positive is to shift some of that expense to the general fund. So I'm recommending that we shift $30,000 to the general fund, which would pay for our shared software programs that we use across the SU, including MAPS, Jump Rope, I think Alpine. There's a few different ones that we use that we were funding through Medicaid. Going to to the detailed page, on page 4, just going through some of the highlights on this page. Our miscellaneous revenue is up by $145,000, and this is mainly due to indirect revenue that we're receiving from the ESSER grants. So we're allowed to take 10% of our total expenses as an indirect revenue to cover any administrative expense, overhead that we have. It's a revenue to cover functions like the extra work that's involved in administration, business office, curriculum, managing those grants. The next section is your assessment revenue. As you can see, those are all negatives or decreases. That's because currently the budget is down. So that's the amount of a decrease you would see at the local level. Moving on to expense, the first major variance is the $30,000 that we just talked about. That's increasing that line from $50,000 to $80,000. The other $50,000 we added a few years ago, and that's covering also SU-wide programs like Infinite Campus, as well as SU-wide professional development, including the annual in-service that we have in August, as well as throughout the rest of the year. Some of the variances under executive admin is the increases in insurance that I mentioned in the summary of changes. And then the rest of the increases are staffing changes or staffing related, which we'll discuss more in executive session. On page 5, you can see the total expense is up by 5.3%, but assessment is down by $51,000, and what each of the variances for your districts are. Any questions on general fund that are not staffing related before we move on to special ed? So the special ed budget starts on page 6, where you'll find all of the detail. But before we look at that, just a few other things to mention. So on page 2 is the assessment calculation for special ed. That would be on the right-hand side. For special ed, we use prior year child count. This is an official count that's sent to the state each December of the number of IEP students. So we increased from 314 to 317. The one thing I would mention too, that, I mean, this number is, at this time, almost a year old. This does not represent our current IEP student number. And when we get a little further into special ed, Christine could answer any questions on what our current numbers are. As you can, but this number would drive your assessments. And so the other thing that I would point out is when there is a change from year to year, it's not always the same per district. So even though the number might go up or down, it doesn't affect, the total number goes up or down, it doesn't affect each district the same. So one district could increase by less than the other districts, lowering their assessment and increasing everybody else's assessment. So not everybody's assessment will be affected at the same rate. It all depends on what your child count number did as compared to the child count whole. Looking at some of the major changes on page 1, so the special ed budget is up by 6.2%. The special ed assessment is up by 6.2%, which is $156,000. One of the major causes to that, which is the second bullet point there, is the shift to Act 173. This was a law that was passed several years ago, but has been delayed for the last few years due to COVID-19. Act 173 shifts from a reimbursable model to a block grant model. So currently, under a reimbursable model, we receive approximately 56.5% back in reimbursement for every special ed dollar that we spend. When we add expense, we receive more revenue, approximately a little over half of that. And same thing, if we decrease expenses, we get less revenue. But as we see our budget grow from year to year, that's partially offset by additional revenue that we're receive based on that reimbursable model. With the shift to the block grant, we receive a set amount each year determined by the state. And that's the amount we receive, and it stays constant. The only exception to that would be certain pockets of special ed, which would be state place, which we receive 100% reimbursement for, and extraordinary reimbursement, which is for students who are high cost. Anything that's over $60,000, we receive 95% back in reimbursement for any dollar that's spent over the $60,000. The first $60,000, we would receive no additional funds. That would be part of the block grant. So based on the change in structure at the state level, if we were to calculate our revenue based on the reimbursable model versus the block grant model, we are losing approximately $181,000 for FY23. So that's that $181,000 is more than the increase that you're seeing in our total special ed assessment. So that whole increase is due to that change in model. Total staffing is up by 3.13%, and you can see the details of that on page 10. It's the last page. It actually doesn't have a page number on it, but it's the last page. So you can see a side-by-side comparison for FY23 versus FY22, and the different categories are broken down: teacher, para, OT, PT, SLP, psych, and support. That increase of 3.13 currently includes 2 FTE, which are new positions that are being recommended. Christine talked a little bit about them at the last board meeting. There are 2 behavior positions. We are recommending that we fund those positions out of ESSER funds for the first year or two, depending on availability of ESSER funds. So the impact of those positions are not included in this budget because they are being grant funded. So next bullet, I'm on the, about the fifth bullet down. Special ed disallowed estimates were increased to be closer to the actuals that we saw in the prior year, which includes an increase for the paras from 17.5% to 20%, an increase for teachers from 5% to 7%, and related service providers were kept the same at 5%. This is, like I said earlier, this is the amount that each staff member is spending in their time that is not special ed related, whether it be working with regular ed students or being assigned regular ed duties. The total disallowed estimates increased by approximately $120,000. Child count, we talked about that a little bit already. And then the only other thing I mentioned is that last bullet includes a 10% increase in health insurance premiums, which is equal to approximately 74%. On page 3, you can find your total assessments, and then how those assessments are billed quarterly to each district. Again, you can find the details on page 6. They're very, I don't know that it's beneficial to go through the details of that, but I would definitely take any questions or let Christine take any questions that's specifics. All of the special ed expenses are based on current IEP needs. It's an estimate for next year. The last thing that I'll mention on page 1 is items for discussion. So this new positions, most of this stuff we've talked about already, but not all of it. So technology technician, Greg mentioned that at the last board meeting when we were talking about parameters and needs, and he does have some data to provide to you tonight, which we'll get to in a few minutes. The 2 behavior positions, which I mentioned earlier, and then a substitute coordinator, which I'm gonna hold off on for now, until we finish the budget discussion, then I have more data on that to discuss later on. And then the last thing that I'll just throw out there was a discussion or a request to consider for administrator travel stipends in lieu of travel reimbursements and the paperwork. It's just, it's nothing that of high importance, but I just thought I'd throw it out there for discussion. So let's move to see if there's any questions, whether it be general fund, special ed, or anything else budget related.
Eric?
I kind of have a question around the special ed numbers. We're using the previous year's child ed count, and I think this is kind of for Christine. If that number is significantly different, well, I mean, will that impact?
Eric, the number we do child count is based on December 1 of the students we have. So that number of 317 was from December 1st of 2020. So right now we're anticipating with this year's child count that we're probably going to be up to closer to 330. We also know that that number was down last year, some because of students who were homeschooled due to COVID. So they would not have showed up in that. So the budget is based on the number of students we currently have and anticipate having for FY23. The ADM that Lewis is using for the assessment would still, or the child count would stay the same, because that's the number he's going to use for the assessment. So even though the students are up, that will not change the assessment.
Okay.
Correct, Lewis?
That is correct. We've always used the one-year lag because we don't have that information to use at the time that we approve the budget. So next year, when we looking at the FY24 budget, we'll use this year's child count. And if there's any decrease in children, we'll still use that higher December 1st number from this year, but the expenses will reflect the actual expenses that we anticipate for FY24.
Okay. And I just had just a quick reminder, the intensive reimbursement on page 6. Why is that blank?
So that's the number that's going away, that's the reimbursable amount.
Okay.
So each year, prior to next year, we will receive two main sources of revenue. We receive a block grant, which is a block grant that it's a small portion. It's a 60-40 match. And so if you look at it, was $690,000 in FY21, and then the other 40% we would have covered out of the assessment. And then the next line would be the intensive. That's the amount that we received in reimbursement. So both of those amounts are being combined and going away to one new number, which will be the Act 173 block grant number.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Can you tell us what behavior position means? Is it interventionist? Is it a behavior specialist? Is it?
Yeah. It would be, what I'm looking at is like behavior specialists that can work both with staff and with students, working on doing what we need to do, what are called functional behavior assessments that then develop behavior intervention plans for students. They will help teams and they will be able to, put together data collection forms so we can track what's going on and how we're improving data and work on with the staff to analyze that data. So, and look at, honestly, someone with like the credentials and the ability that someone like an Abby Bennett has, is a teaching background, also has the behavioral background, and that can work closely with staff.
So what's the percentage that those individuals are working with students versus the percentage they are working with staff? Because I'm just going to say that I feel like we need more people in the classrooms actually doing the work. So for me to be invested and approve these kinds of positions, I need to know that they're more than 60% working with students as opposed to working with teachers.
Yeah, these positions these aren't teacher training or mentoring positions, as we put at the SU. This would be directly to go in, work with students, build plans, model what to do, and help to support those students directly.
And how many of these positions do we currently have within the SU?
Right now, we actually don't have, we have one that's, nothing that's funded through special ed.
Okay.
We have.
So how are you determining with two, how they're being building based across?
Yeah, they're gonna be spread thin, yes. Two will spread them thin.
And when we say, I think we've gotten really comfortable with saying we're going to add something because we have grant money, which is lovely to be able to do to try things out.
Mm-hmm.
But then in a few years, Lewis comes back and says, Medicaid's going away, this is going away, it's trickling down to local budget, it's being put here. It says for a number of years, I believe it says, this will be grant funded. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, I think Christine was looking to add these positions whether we funded them through the grant or not. And there's an identified need, and whether the ESSER money was available or not, she feels there's a need to add these positions. So we're hoping to use ESSER funds to soften the blow to local districts because we have that money available and we know the special ed budget's already up. But there is a need for these positions even if you take away that grant fund.
So who's been doing this work?
No, it's really just case managers, special educators try to support teachers with this, and they work, but then they get pulled a lot. So I think, it's spreading everyone thin.
So if there's any other questions, we can take those. Otherwise, Greg has some information on the tech needs, and then we can do that, and then we can go back to questions.
Okay, that sounds good.
How you doing? It is I. I don't have a decision before you, but I wanted to give you a 2-pager PDF just to highlight some of the challenges in our department, and also just a lot of people don't know the amount of devices and programs and ticket impact day to day, month to month, and seasonal. So I could share that in chat. Actually, I can't attach in chat for some reason. That might be an error. I was going to share it to the remote users, but I can run through it and then email everybody later. I apologize for getting this late and not into the board packet, but every time I sat down to do it, I kept getting pulled. So I'll present it, just run through it. I'm not going to get into the minutia of it, but just a little overview, just something for you to consider before I reach a recommendation for the next meeting. I'm going to put it on my screen now. So this is a hardware overview as to like how many devices are generally found in the GRCSU. The amount of Chromebooks, the amount of laptops, typically what their man hours to maintain are. The software overview, meaning the amount of programs that we either directly or indirectly have to provide support for. Some of these, like I alluded to in the text, require very little time, and some require, in the case of like the state report that Milt sometimes has to work on, which she's working on at a SU level, sometimes takes a week or more. And then just a breakdown of the technicians, their buildings that they're assigned to, and the populations of users in the building. I say users just to lump all student and staffing requests in there because we deal with both of those pretty equally. And then just a little breakdown of the responsibilities and the size of the department. What a system administrator is, what a webmaster or communications person is, analyst, what do I do, and then just a summary to how many people have to respond to how many users with how many programs. I'd be happy to answer questions about that. A little infograph taken today. From the beginning of the calendar year up until now, and these are ticket requests that are created and fulfilled. So these could be any ticket request that is, takes 2 seconds to fix, or sometimes takes hours, days, or, weeks to fix. So these are all general requests about the whole SU. And you can see that there's very clear crunch times, usually around breaks, around initiatives, around start of the school year, as you can see in late August. As we're distributing Chromebooks and distributing programs, the requests go up. Just a little bit, 5,500 tickets totally serviced since 2018. A little blurb here that I've been able to glean from public information, and these are staffing levels comparable in technology departments in SUs of a similar size. Then some of the alternative strategies I'm considering before asking for additional staff members, meaning grant funding to test models, additional overtime for non-salaried staff during times when they're either taking home a lot of work or doing a lot of work on site, late hours or early hours. One thing I'd like you to consider is raises for primarily the technician and non-salaried positions, as technicians are in great demand in Rutland. And I've noticed with some anxiety the pay rates per hour for technicians of similar duties going up in the area as these people are becoming increasingly difficult to find within driving radius. I know it's a problem everybody else has, but in technology where you have to have a certain understanding that usually is 10 plus years of knowledge, these people become increasingly difficult to find. And then, reassessing tech duties, meaning how could I structure my department better to get these tickets out, to get new programs in everybody's hands, to get useful devices in the hands without delays. And so I'm just a little blurb that I'm, exploring different avenues of strategies before I just simply add a person to the mix. That's really about it.
Any questions for Greg?
A question. The software overview. Do all of the Chromebooks use this software, or is that just the Windows?
Chromebooks use what's called Chrome OS, and it's made by Google. It has lower software requirements than a Windows laptop. The updates come pretty quickly, but technicians do have to do things like make sure they're updated and correct errors. So there's less of a software load on it than a Windows laptop, where there's a lot of moving pieces that can go wrong, a lot of programs installed. And we give teachers the ability to add and remove programs, and sometimes that screws the device up. But they come with significant maintenance requirements because they're in the hands of students, and they're often damaged. And based on what people want to see, which is like the very popular Chromebooks that we rolled out in the last round, which are foldable. They have, 2 or 3 different cameras for different uses. They can be used as tablets, and they're becoming smaller and smaller. Those are becoming more difficult to repair, and sometimes it's added a lot of repair time to when we used to have these rugged Chromebooks that were very easy to fix, but were not very well liked by the students. They were ugly, they were small, and frankly, even though they say rugged, they broke pretty easily. So the Chromebooks that they have in their hands are pretty slick devices now. the new ones that are coming in. And thereby, when you add that layer of complication, it just adds a layer of repair complication to it.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to comment that this is a pretty nice overview. I didn't realize how much software and hardware the supervisory union had.
Yeah, our being the acolytes of this weird thing called tech, most people just understand if something is working or if it's not working. But now, especially with the reliance, especially through COVID, but we've been pretty progressive in our technology in the past. But the amount of programs and their data requirements have become pretty big. And I think they're just going to get exponentially more and more and more as these tools become more sophisticated. They require more of the tech departments in data loading and student information and historical information and just the informatics of them all. To just add all the students to one particular program, sometimes requires several hours of an export from Infinite Campus, tailoring the import to the program requirements, and then importing the information. Just getting a program, quote unquote, up and running can sometimes take a week or more, depending on the requirements. I could have made this easily a 25-page. But after the first 10 minutes, there's this glaze over effect when people look at me like, okay, wrap it up, Craig.
Just for clarity,
concision is not my strong point.
So for clarification, you are not currently asking for an additional employee. You're going to look at other options within your department? Is that what we're taking away from the alternative strategies being explored?
Yeah, like you said, and you've said in previous meetings, sometimes the answer is not just to throw a person at it. Though, we've been pretty busy since the start of school year, and we really haven't gotten together as a group to explore all these alternative strategies. Usually just talking about the problems in our staff meetings usually take up 2-3 hours just to get a sense of where everybody is and where we need to apply manpower. So we haven't had really the luxury of trying to try different models and mix up some of the staffing or work on different strategies. But I am aware that just adding a person might not solve something, but being more intelligent about the way we apply it. But at a certain point, there is mathematics behind all of this. The amount of programs, the amount of devices, the amount of buildings, the amount of users, and just get to a point that even if I added 2 staff members, it wouldn't necessarily solve a problem. I just want to make the board aware of this and it will continue to be an exponential change. So technology investment now could pay off in the future as these demands just become more and more and more.
Okay, I just want the board to be clear as we're talking about the budget this evening with respect to whether it's including it within the budget or we're looking at ESSER funds. That's still a conversation to have with the board. So that's a conversation we're having this evening. So I just want clarity that at this point, the request that says on here, new positions for technology technician, at this point, that's not something we're currently considering.
No, I'm not putting that forward as a decision as yet.
Okay.
But I'm working with Lewis, and if I have a decision for the next meeting, of course, I will present it with as much information as I possibly can. But I'm still trying to work this through with Lewis in the way of maybe not putting these demands directly into the budget this year, but I want you to be aware of some of the recommendations I might make, whether they be locally funded or grant funded for next time.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Greg? All right, thank you, and thank you for the handout. All right, Louis, did you have other things that you want to discuss?
If there's no other questions about the budget, I do want to talk about the other piece that was in the packet about substitutes.
Okay.
So I'll go over that, then we'll go back if there's more questions that are budget related.
Okay.
So, over the last few years, we have had issues with substitutes. Even pre-COVID we were having issues with reliability of Kelly services. There was a lot of turnover from year to year. We had a different rep each year, and which made it difficult to keep our staffing needs stable from year to year. COVID-19 has increased that exponentially. Our pools have been deteriorated for each school. The amount of people that we have to pull from on a daily basis is pretty minimal. We finally had a rep at Kelly Services that was pretty responsive for the last year. However, as of late August, that rep has been pulled from our account. For the month of September, we were thrown into a sort of a cycle of whoever the ongoing reps were. And the rep that we had that was working out has now moved on to a different part of Kelly Services. So it's no longer even available. Because of the unreliableness of the service, and we're one of the few SUs in the state of Vermont who's still using Kelly Services, we feel it's time for a change, and we would like to explore moving our substitutes in-house. What that means is that we would look to have a substitute coordinator who would be in charge of onboarding, recruitment, scheduling, reviewing the pools, working with school front offices and admin on a daily basis on their needs, working with subs, processing timesheets, doing everything that Kelly Services is doing for us now. We would look to recruit subs in-house. They would be on our payroll, and we would assign them as needed. The current sort of the way Kelly does it now, based on people would go in and sign up for absences. So in the handout, I've listed what our current expenses were for the last 3 years. As you can see from the handout, FY20 and FY21 really are not reliable numbers because of the pandemic. Our number in FY19 was $388,000. That's the total that we spent. FY20 was $318,000, but as you recall, we closed school in March and went remote from March through June. So that number is definitely deflated. And then FY21, due to the deterioration of the substitute pools, as well as the fact that we were remote on Wednesdays, those actuals are not really reliable numbers. We have, and then since FY19, we've also increased our rates, so that FY19 number would be higher today if we were filling those same positions. Across the SU, we have $445,000 budgeted for Kelly subs. Of that, approximately $311,000 of that is wages paid directly to the subs. The other $133,000 is Kelly Services overhead. We pay 43% current. So for every dollar that's paid out, we pay $1.43 to Kelly Services. Of the $133,000 in overhead, approximately $23,000 of that would be the taxes that they're paying for FICA and Social Security. Approximately another $15,000 would be other payroll-related costs like workman's comp, unemployment, onboarding expense, stuff like that. And then about another $95,000 of it would be Kelly's overhead, profit, training costs, whatever other costs that they have associated as part of their 43%. So if we were to move this in-house, those are the numbers that we'd be looking at using to utilize for recruitment purposes, the position to manage this, software to manage it. So it should be a cost neutral expense. We're still in the early exploration steps of this process. We're looking at working with other SUs to see how they're doing it, see what the staffing needs are from someone to manage this, software needs, stuff like that. But just a ballpark estimate, just to throw a number at it, we're thinking $70,000 at this point, total cost for salary, benefits, and software-related costs, which would definitely be more than covered by that $95,000 in overhead we'd be saving from Kelly Services. So a few other things I would want to mention about this. So we would be looking to start this hopefully July 1st of the coming year, if we can get this off the ground. The other thing I would mention is that this is not an immediate fix. Part of the problem is staffing shortages that we're seeing nationwide and in Vermont as well. So just moving this in-house isn't going to fix the staffing shortage problem, but it'll put those problems in our hand and not in Kelly Services. We're continually hearing issues that relate to us from the field, where people that are trying to sign up for Kelly Services and it takes them a month or two to be onboarded before they can start subbing. We can do that process in a matter of days. So we can get more people working in our buildings faster than Kelly can.
How do we background check them in a number of days when sometimes it takes up to a week to have people fingerprinted?
So the Kelly Service, yes, we would have to wait for them to get a Kelly Service appointment, fingerprinting appointment, but we're still doing that process for Kelly Services. That process aside, it's still taking Kelly Service a month or two to get their paperwork in order. So, we can have people come in, do the onboarding process, and it's just a matter of getting them an appointment to get fingerprinted. We can do it a lot faster than Kelly Services can. In addition, we would have better communication with schools and the need. We'd be able to do better reporting. We'd have we have more control over the whole process. And then the last thing I would bring up is that filling more positions costs more money. So if we were to ever resolve our issue with fill percentages, you would see an increase in expense. So when we don't fill positions, it causes a lot of stress at the buildings, chaos, sometimes crisis, but that is resulting in a decrease in cost. It's not what's best for students, I want to mention that just because if we do fix this issue with the staffing shortages and we can supply more subs and fill more positions, we will have a higher substitute expense, but it'll be best for students and their instructional needs. The other thing that we'll have to address at a later date is if we bring this in-house, and whether we bring it in-house or not, is our current sub rate and whether that's competitive and whether that's affecting affecting the size of our pool and the number of people we have available to sub in our buildings. Got to remember subs may not only work for us, they may work for other SUs. And if there's two SUs that have a need on the same day, and one SU is paying $10, $20 more, they're going to pick the one that's paying more. So that's just one item that we'll need to look at. Other sub rates in the area. We just did increase our rates to make us more competitive, but it's something that we'll need to continuously look at in the future.
So is this something we're looking at to include in the budget as grant funded with a lot of information missing?
So, as of right now, we don't have a lot of information, but since we're looking to grant fund this position, we don't need approval for this right now, because it will have no impact on the SU budget or the local budgets. I am not looking for approval for this position tonight. I just wanted to give you a heads up of something. It's something we're exploring, and we hope to come back to you with more information in the future.
But purchasing the software to do this is something that would be funded through the budget, or that's grant funded also?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure of the cost. It's a software we're currently using already. We use it at no expense because it's provided by Kelly Services. So I imagine once we disconnect from the Kelly Services, we'd have to start paying for that. Plus, we may have to increase the capability because right now we're only using the employee side. We need to start using the substitute side. Like I said, we don't have a lot of those pieces of information, but when we're ready to move forward, that information will be brought forward. And any costs that we would incur would be offset by the savings that we have in overhead that we're paying to Kelly Services. So if we keep our Kelly Service budgets the same as they are right now in our local budgets as well as in the SU budget, we should have more than enough to cover those costs. It won't have any impact on the budget, so we can make that decision at a later date.
And you believe this is a one-person position?
I believe so. I believe it's a one-person position to get it started, and it may even be able to be reduced after it's been established.
Go ahead.
Question, Louis. You're looking at about a $63,000 difference between the salary and the annual overhead with Kelly. Is that correct? Is that my number correct there? Roughly?
Yes, with the numbers that you're looking at, yes, but that's not the complete picture. So
Correct.
it'd be about 25,000 because of the 133,000 in overhead. Some of those other costs we would still incur.
Okay.
If we run it in-house, so we'd still have to pay taxes on those wages, which is the 23,000 below.
Okay.
That 133, and we still have to pay workman's comp and unemployment and other payroll costs. So it's the 95,000 in overhead profit is a number that we're looking at working with.
Okay. Secondly, are we looking at a model for talking about substitutes, credentialed teachers who are substitutes versus non-credentialed people, pay differences?
We don't currently have that model. If that's something that the board wants us to look at, that's something we can consider.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is we may have substitutes in the area who are credentialed and still want to stay credentialed and have a desire still to be in the school, but not necessarily full-time, and may be more reliable and more flexible as far as their ability to handle situations. So I'd kind of like to see something that sort of rewards those versus calling me in to be a substitute, which would be a disaster.
We do pay a higher rate for licensed teachers to be long-term subs, which would be, so if one of these subs was covering a maternity leave or an FMLA leave or some other approved leave, then they would be paid based on, it's approximately $217 a day, I believe. They're paid based on the first step in the teacher scale.
Yep, I understand that. I'm looking at substitutes, credentialed substitutes being paid a better wage than me, a non-credentialed person.
That's something we can take into account when we bring this in-house. I will put that on the list.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question about the expenses that are listed here? I was just curious, the jump from $611 for GRCSU in FY19 up to $95,000 in FY20, and what led to that increase?
Oh, I see.
I'm gonna guess misprint.
So without actually double checking, I'm gonna assume that the special ed, all the special ed subs are being, through the local districts. That would be the only need, that would be the only need at the SU level, would be special ed subs. And then in FY20, they started through the local district, or through the SU. But I can double check that.
Yeah, I was just curious how that was being spread out amongst the districts.
Any other questions?
I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say that I like that you're thinking outside the box and trying to do things differently and find ways to save money and have more local control. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving back to budget, any other questions on budget before we move on? Anything you want us to include, take out the next round? This will be brought back in November, and we would be looking for an approval at the November board meeting.
Can I ask a quick question on page number 6? I know you explained the intensive reimbursement, and I think I understand that, but I just wasn't clear on the extraordinary reimbursement. Is that also related to the change in something?
No, so the extraordinary revenue, that's the revenue that we're generating for students who have a high need, and so as a result, there's a high cost. So under the reimbursable model, the first $60,000 is reimbursable at 56%. After you've hit $60,000, any dollar that's spent after $60,000, we receive 95% in reimbursement. So, for example, if we have a student who, let's say, is an outside placement and their total cost is $100,000. So for the first $60,000 of that cost, we get 56% back in reimbursement. For the next $40,000, from $60,001 to $100,000, we receive 95% back in reimbursement. So we're seeing a big jump in that number from 253,000 to 490,000 because we do have some students with high needs that we're expecting for next year.
Thank you. I remember you talking about it. I didn't realize it correlated with that one. Thanks.
I think the other conversations we need to have around budget are executive session, personnel matters for budget.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, is there any old business to come before the board? Hearing none, new business. Eric.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to congratulate Lisa for being our new regional ESD.
Yeah.
If everyone didn't know.
Yeah, that's because no one else raised their hand.
Yeah. All right, so.
Thank you, Lisa.
Nice. The only one unmuted at the time.
So everyone got the SBA handouts. I don't think, you know, you have to really go through and read all these. I was hoping everyone had already done it, and if you have any questions, we can just kind of go through it. But, you know, essentially, I just wanted to get, you know, a sense of direction of voting for the business meeting next week. You know, otherwise, I'd just be guessing. So, the first one is from Edison Northwest School District. And again, unless everyone wants, I can go through and read all these, but you should have it in front of you. The recommendation from the resolution committee at the VSBA is to pass this resolution, which just basically talks about not having a single statewide account software system. Did anyone have any questions about this? Okay. So I guess we can just go through and just have, you know, I'm not, if everyone wants to pass this, we can just,
Or did anybody, after reading through them, were there any that, any board members didn't agree with the recommendation of the resolution committee? Or have a question about? Eric is our voting member. But anyone can join the meeting if you want. It's a public meeting. So any board member could join it.
I guess on number 2, proposal resolution 2. Does that include or exclude parochial schools, religious schools? Do you know, or is that, because I'm wondering what they're talking, what the word independent means to them may be different than what it means to me.
I believe this just revolves around independent schools.
I guess that would be like a Long Trail. Or in Burton, something like that.
I don't think religious schools receive public funds, but if they did, then it would also include them, the way it's stated.
Yeah, right now we do pay for the religious.
So then it would be included. It would still be considered an independent school.
Yeah, because
It's in that gray area because not all SUs have elected to reimburse or to pay religious schools, so there's still pending litigation. So I know that we were advised by our attorney to move forward with that. So I think this is where I don't necessarily know if they're including religious institutions into this or not, but that's something which we could get clarification on for you. So
I'd be opposed to that one if they don't. Well, because I'm looking for, if they talk about equality, independence. Some districts do it, some don't. I think the Supreme Court came down and said that was something that they, to look at, right, Chris? Did I remember that right, or something?
there have been some questions regarding religious institutions and some of their practices and some of their views and around inclusivity and acceptance of all students, and I think that has been some of the resistance that SUs and, you know, individuals have had in having you know, public dollars go to an institution that does not support a, you know, inclusive practices. That's a question. You know, we can reach out.
Okay.
Let you know.
Thanks.
I could address number 1 if anybody has any questions on that.
No, we were good. We thought the health software system worked so fabulous that. Okay, proposal 3.
Yeah, this has to do with the pupil weighting studies. Do you know how this is going to affect these weighting studies, our schools at all? Louis, or
I'm not sure on how they would affect us.
I don't know enough about the proposal, to say yay or nay. I know we're probably the one district that it's gonna affect, the most, but I haven't actually seen the proposal.
Has anyone in our SU seen the report from dated 2019?
And does anybody know if this proposal they're talking about, does it match the Senate's proposal that they're getting ready to push? I mean, I just don't know enough about this yet.
I think it's just agreeing with the report from the study.
Right, but we haven't seen the report, so.
But they have.
well, there's a second handout that does have a little bit more information.
About the report?
Well, just about the resolution, but it does talk about, what is it, we're on number 3.
Yep.
Page
Oh, I
5.
see, yep.
So, it says, in the resolution,
Gotcha.
Vermont's formula for calculating funding utilizes weighting factors created over 20 years ago. And, if I remember when they created, this,
For the gold towns.
yeah, it was like some sort of committee to go through it. They talked about how it could affect, calculating funding. I don't know, again, how it, would affect our districts.
Like I said, I need to know what they're talking about as far as their plan.
It looks more for special
And if
education.
South Burlington and the rest are in favor of it, I would say that usually if it is in favor of most of our school districts, but Rutland Town would not be, even though we've come up in our, we're not at a 1% or below as far as needing people in the community. But I have to see everything. I would not be in favor of passing it until I see it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always questionable when it says equitable access. That has come back to bite particular districts within our SU, so. I mean, I understand what she's saying.
So then what are we doing? Are we asking Eric to not pass it, or?
Well, I think what we'll, if no one has any other questions, we can just go through and I can just get a pass, no pass, and we can just take, everyone's vote, and then if
That's how they'll vote.
majority, I'll vote pass, and, if everyone feels that, there's not enough information on this and everyone wants to vote no, whatever. I just think that we have to come up with something tonight.
Right.
And I think,
Okay.
So you want to go back to 1 and start that process, Eric?
Sure.
yep, might as well.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just say, everyone who wants to pass resolution number 1, raise your hand.
I would say that was unanimous.
All right, unanimous.
Should ask for no anyway.
Yeah. Is there anyone opposed? I don't think there's anyone left. Everyone raised their hand. Okay.
All right, number 2. Raise your hand if you want to pass resolution number 2.
It does say religious schools in here, Mike,
Okay.
right?
Noes?
It says
not
the
pass.
purpose, oh, the first, oh, I see it.
So how many yeses do you have? Any?
Just one.
One, okay. Noes?
Okay, Lynette, is that a do not pass?
Well, because I don't know if religious schools are included in it.
Okay.
Again, not enough information.
This was,
Okay.
So you have a no vote on that one?
But it's saying that in order to receive funds, they have to be equal and equitable. So if
It's
a religious
saying-
school is not equal and equitable, then they won't receive funds,
But,
is what it's saying.
it says public and independent schools.
right, but where we are, Tina, is they can say that, but then they'll say it's up to us to figure out if they are equitable or not, but you can't go and ask a religious school to itemize exactly what they do and how long they do it, so there's no teeth behind that perception.
Guaranteed through law. They're asking the General Assembly to pass a law.
Which is pretty
And
heavy.
is there any information on the amount of funding?
No.
You know, if it's peanuts, it's a lot different than if it's, let's say, equitable funding to our schools.
So you're not going to know the specifics because the resolution is asking the General Assembly to create a law to do this. So the iterations of that could be 24 before it passes. I mean, these are simply the parameters they're asking to put within the law that the General Assembly creates. I would vote yes. I mean, I think we should all operate under financial, educational accountability and excellence. So I am fine with asking the General Assembly to put that in, to create a law to make all have that requirement. And I would hope that independent schools would include religious schools. So,
Right.
and you
And if
could,
it does, I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
But I
If
gotta
that condition,
know
I would
how
vote for
not
it also,
knowing.
but.
and maybe that's something you can say when voting, like, what does, does it, I don't know. So, all those in favor?
Yeah, raise your hand, pass.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 1, 2.
Yeah, until I know for sure, I gotta say no.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Fine, that's fair. I mean,
I have no problem with that.
Gives them something to,
yeah, I mean, we're not asking,
not binding on it.
not
Yeah.
asking for, something that's going to affect us tomorrow. I mean, this
Right.
is just, this is just taking a direction, given,
Yeah,
And others may come up with that same question too, we don't know, so.
yeah, all right. The weighting report, number 3.
Yeah, the people weighting factors. And again, these are, all these resolutions go before a board, and they're, I would say that they are talked about immensely. I mean, I'm sure you can, you can find those meetings.
Yeah, there's a webinar where they're discussing
Yeah,
them.
I mean, even in more depth, if you want, but.
So all those in favor of number 3?
Well, yeah, I was gonna ask if anyone had any more
Oh,
questions about that. And I know there's limited information here, but if you don't feel comfortable with passing something, that's fine.
I feel like what happened, and I might be wrong, maybe you can correct me, because you were at the last meeting where you got all this information, or I don't know where you got this information, actually. But from what I understand is that there was a study group that went back and made this report, which is being considered in the legislature, right? Which hasn't fully come out yet. But what this is saying is that the Vermont School Board Association Board approved that report that a lot of time and energy went into. So they're saying we agree with it and we want to push this forward. That's all this is saying, right?
Yeah.
So we just agree with that the board, agrees with it.
Yeah, it just
Right?
supports the findings
Yeah.
from that commission or that committee.
And I don't know how me as a layperson is going to disagree with that whole study that was done by experts that were, refiguring weighting formulas. I don't understand why we.
I think it was done by UVM. Don't quote me, but I mean, it's been so long. The stuff kind of, they actually postponed implementing these, with the pandemic before, assessing how this would affect districts. So, and I think that's where that report came.
But the intent was to try to equalize things, but more than it had been.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe the old.
It was supposed to like reevaluate essentially when they had the gold towns before.
Right.
Yeah.
So Louis, you have no idea for the funding formula if there would be any impact on any particular district within the SU or the SU?
Not that I can confidently speak of.
Okay. Okay, so
All right.
all those in favor?
Sounds like we just need more information to be confident in the decision. I'm not against it, I guess I'll
Right,
abstain.
okay. Lynette?
I'm just gonna say again, last time this happened, it tore the state in half.
That's true.
There's a lot of surveys and stuff that come out of UVM, which is why some of the political movements are out there. You can make a survey say anything you want. And yes, I agree with the premise of what they're doing. I do not agree with their statistics and how they come up with them. I do not agree. If you remember, I know Mike and Lisa will remember, they look at, there's your budget, you cannot increase your budget by over a certain percentage or you will be penalized. No one in the state of Vermont has ever been penalized. I know our districts, and I'm talking back then it would be Proctor, West Rutland, and Rutland Town, would never go over a 3 or 4% increase. Up north, they're all 10, 12% increases. Nobody ever got penalized, but then again, we're paying for them. So nobody was held accountable for what they did. Now they're looking at it and they want to refigure it again. And I have to say, absolutely not. I have no confidence whatsoever. I know the senators and the politicians who are pushing for this are very liberal. It benefits pretty much, it will look like it benefits the same people the original Act 60 did. And there's going to be a war, so there's no way I can say yes for Rutland Town. Absolutely not.
Okay.
We're going to get them.
All right, so everyone not in favor, do
Okay.
not pass, raise your hand.
Why do I feel like Seth is trying to be like Charlie Chaplin?
Get off the wall.
Just call him Switzerland.
Okay,
Okay.
Without the chocolate.
all right.
I didn't see Lance or Amanda.
No.
I abstain.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, Amanda. All right, so,
Lisa, can I just say it?
Yeah.
At the VSBA, VSA Fall Conference, which you all should have received a link to, it's the 4th and the 5th, there is a session on the 5th at noon that deals with the weighting study. So if
Okay.
any of you are interested, you should have the link, you should be able to.
Yeah, Christine sent it to all of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so just register, there's a free, it's free, so just,
Yeah,
we paid for it, so.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, number 4. Any discussion on this one?
No, I don't. Number 4?
Yeah.
Any questions on number 4? Everybody okay with 4?
Can I just, see if you can understand, I just want to make sure I've got this right. So they want to expand pre-K and after-school funding. So they're pretty much mandating that we're going to have to do more than we are now without any access to funds to help support it.
I think the word, if you look at it, says expands the resolution by expecting the same obligations. I think they're just looking for, in my view, the way I read this is that it's gotta be equal across the board. Not necessarily expanding it, but expanding the resolution that says it should be equal across the board. That's the way I look at it.
I think it's so like,
So should everybody do, say, after-school programs, or nobody, or
I don't think it's
you have your
requesting.
choice?
I don't think it's requesting any of those programs. I think it's what it's saying is, if you have those programs, they want to expand the same obligations to those programs to make them equal. That's just the way I read it.
I think it's equaling out off-site school, after school,
It's
or
not saying expand
pre-K programs. So let's say,
XYZ.
yeah, Little Shepherds, they should be doing the same thing because they're receiving funding for the pre-K program via public funds that you're doing in Rutland Town. They can't, they have to follow the same rules, regulations, parameters. That's why it's talking about independent schools, pre-K programs like that. That
If I'm not
support.
mistaken, if they're getting funds, they have to do that anyways.
Well, there obviously is a concern. Amanda?
I'm just as far as like pre-K, like K through 6 elementary school, those after-school programs can't necessarily be the same because the preschoolers have to follow different guidelines.
They're talking about programs that are off-site from schools being the same as a pre-K program that's in your school. So Little Shepherds down the block on the corner of Chestnut and Elm needs to operate the same as it's operating within the pre-K or after-school program is that's operating in the school if they're receiving public funds to do that. That's what they're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any problems with that? Okay. I'm gonna go with that, looks like a pass.
Okay. Looks like it.
Number 5. I have no problem with this.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know. Anybody have a problem with number 5? Everybody okay to pass number 5?
Yes.
Seth? Yeah, what?
I'm actually reading the detailed one as we speak.
Okay,
One more.
okay.
Which one?
I don't know.
He found it.
I mean, it's basically things we've already talked about in our, starting to do within our SU in our districts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. Looks like a pass. Got thumbs up. All right, number 6.
What's the appointment process? I don't even know what it is.
I don't know. I will tell you, I'm not in favor of this. I think that's what, it follows the requirements of Act 154, but
I have to go look up Act 154. Oh, here it is.
The select board isn't coming to us to ask about appointments. I find it a little like,
Oh,
I think they took that away from the select boards, right? When they
they
changed that, it
did,
used to be.
but now it's only if you're a unified board because you're by different towns, and you kind of saw something like that happen in a neighboring community. So, I think we're grown up enough that we can, appoint ourselves. But I would vote no on that.
okay.
People in favor of number 6? And it really doesn't apply to Rutland Town because it's Unified Union School Districts, so.
Like Otter Valley.
Huh?
Wallingford, Otter Valley.
Yeah, but for us, it would be us, it would be Middletown, Wells, but Rutland Town is not a Unified Union School District, so.
Sure, just cut me out again.
That's something you don't have to worry about.
You can merge with the city anytime you want to.
Mike, are we going there?
All right.
I'm not recommending it.
Anybody, all those opposed to number 6? Seth, still reading?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand, because it looks like they're just changing their mind completely.
So they're saying if we have an opening in Quarry Valley and it's in Poultney, we should go to the Poultney Select Board and say, we'd like Joe Smith to come and we'd like to appoint them. We're coming to you to see what you think before we appoint them.
Versus what's already.
Versus, like, we have an opening on the board, we say within our local towns that we have an opening, letters of, interest are sent to the superintendent brings them to the board. If we have multiple ones, which never happens, we do a little happy dance. It's kind of like, that's how you got on the board, Seth. You wrote a letter, and we liked your letter.
Yeah, the select board somehow was involved as well, though. They had to approve it first.
They took.
They thought they did. Pulte decided to go to them, yeah. Yeah,
Well, Wellsprings already dealt with this year,
I don't,
yeah.
and
I mean, I think,
It should stay within the school area that it's involved. Like, I wouldn't apply for Poultney, but Poultney wouldn't apply for somebody
you
from.
still have
No.
to follow
Yeah.
the statute, and, basically you have 30 days to notify the select board of that town.
Yeah,
And if, that vacancy isn't filled, then you essentially work with the select board to appoint someone. It just seems like a bunch of extra hoops to have to jump through, given
Right.
the timeline and.
and also, what if it's someone they don't endorse?
I think it says the district has overall.
Final say.
Yeah, they do,
Final
but it's
say.
just one more, like, piece. Like when Seth came on and somebody else, because Poultney was sure that we needed to do that, it was like this long, it seemed like a very arduous process to get people on, because at the time, we only had like a couple of Poultney members or something, and had 2 or 3 openings.
myself and Kristen Whitman came on.
Yeah.
And we were, in my case, right, I didn't know what actually happened. I was just told
You-
what I told.
Yeah. It was just kind of out there for a while. Yeah. Okay.
So is this a do not pass?
Do not pass. That was a thumbs down.
If I weren't in Rutland Town, I would say do not pass either.
So you abstaining?
Okay. All right.
Doesn't matter, I guess.
Then there's the bylaws. I don't know if you really want to, this is part of the business meeting
Right,
as well.
right.
And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't even read these.
Okay. How about we do this? The bylaws, if you have questions or concerns with that, you can, message Eric and discuss them. But, I have full faith and confidence for Eric as the voting member. That's what you get, Eric. You threw me right out there before, and so
Well,
tossing it right back to you.
I mean, I'll sit down and read through all this stuff,
Okay.
you know, before the meeting.
I think when I read through the bylaws, a lot of it was just kind of
Yeah.
cleaning up the language. It's not really
I agree.
a
There wasn't anything.
huge change of intent. I think it was just a lot of it's clarification to make it a
Changing
little more,
dates.
yeah, and make it a little more friendly for lay people, I think. So,
And I'll just say that, you know, the VSBA has regular webinars. They are, most of them are in the afternoons, like from 12 to 1. They used to have them in the evenings. I don't know why they changed it to earlier in the afternoon. you
Yeah.
know, But I find that's harder to try and to do those. But there's a lot of useful information in there, and you know, maybe someday they'll go back to the evening meetings.
well, they usually have them, so you can just go on
They
and,
have them posted.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
can see
but you
later.
can participate in these. Is
Oh,
what I'm
yeah,
getting
yeah.
at.
Yeah.
You know, it's
You
like
can't-
if you had
yeah.
questions, and I mean, you can always email them as well. But
Yeah.
so yeah, you know, maybe our regional rep,
can get that moved. Yeah.
maybe she can help us with that.
I did participate in the bias, it was like a 6-week thing. I didn't complete it in the manner they like, so I'm not getting a certificate, but I did complete all of there were 3 of us that were not certificate ready, I guess, so,
Interesting.
yeah.
You got a certificate for it. Did you stay for the whole meetings?
So you don't have to, once you go, they send it to you every week, and you do it on your own.
Oh.
So it's online, and every week you had a different issue or something else you were reading through. There were different links that you could go on and read things. There were questions that you had to answer. There were things that you made notes to that stayed private for you. There were things there were, I think, 9 people maybe in it, and you could write, and then people could read, and they can respond to you. You could respond to them. There were things that act about, you know, like, for example, one thing it asked, have you ever experienced bias or prejudice? What does that look like? What does that feel like? So, you know, there was a lot of good information in there, but yeah, you didn't have to stay in the meeting. It was really confusing when you signed up.
That's why it says they wanted that commitment. And
Yeah, but the commitment was the time. You needed to set aside 45 minutes to an hour every week to read through and do everything, but it was you could do it at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So I know, that's what I thought in the beginning. Before I even started, I said, I'm not going to be able to do this after I signed up, because when we talked, that's what it said. And then she was like, oh no, she goes, you can do it at your own leisure. So I know. Yeah, it really was kind of confusing, but it was worth it. I thought it was really interesting, so. Okay, thank you for that, Eric. And then, yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
I would encourage people, you can sign on and join the meeting. The meeting is always interesting to hear perspectives from other things that are around the state, I think, sometimes. Okay, so we have 2 policies for first read. Any questions, changes? Since they're just first reads, that is that.
I'll just say that these are just model policies that we just went through and just reviewed. I also want to say, you know, thanks to everyone on the policy committee, you know, for having 2 meetings in October to, you know, just help facilitate some of these policies that we have. And, you know, especially a lot of the new ones that are coming down that are being developed. And so the policy committee, do you want me to talk about the timeline or
The work plan?
yeah, the work plan. Well, at least for the policy committee, we're working on a work plan that we'll have probably next month for everyone to see the policies that are coming down on like a month-by-month basis, and essentially the policy committee will see this first, and, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I will say the date for the next meeting is incorrect. We are not going to be meeting on the 24th. We'll be meeting on November 17th. So if everybody wants to make that correction on there.
I think that was at the bottom of Chris's report.
Oh, okay.
He gave us a heads.
Yeah. Oh, we had talked about it, but just because it was on the agenda, I just wanted to make sure. If there's nothing else to come before the board, we do need to have an executive session for personnel, for GRCSU department evaluations, and personnel budget discussions, which is actually one conversation. So, we will take a 10-minute break here, so PEG TV can clean up, and if everyone could be back at 8:20, Lewis, that would be great.